Let's get into it. As Z brings you #science. That's right, everybody. It's the time of the morning where Z presents to you all the latest and greatest news articles being presented to the great unwashed masses, to the plebs, to the proletariat, to the useless eaters. That's right. The ham and eggers, the people who are so busy just trying to make it. The people that are so busy just trying to get through their day, support their families, keep a roof over their heads, that they're not really paying attention to actual science as they're being fed what I call #science, which really isn't science at all. It's science in name only. It's science personified. It's a guy in a white coat with a degree on his wall trying to tell you what this reality is. Like I said, it's #science. Today's #science article comes to you from the website Futurism. It's entitled Ancient Voyager Probes Plead for Death. NASA says no. Which is weird. Because I thought those Voyager probes that they launched in the late 70s out into deep space, I thought they were like machines. But here it's like you're personifying them. As you say, they plead for death, but NASA says no. Wow, it's weird. One could say you're just being clever in your title. But others like me might think that you're just trying to like personify these Voyager probes. Present them as characters. Almost as if they're sentient. Potentially in a way to play on our nostalgia and to connect us emotionally with your space presentation, your space program. Oh, my music messed up again. It always happens when I do this segment. My fucking music skips. And then I gotta stomp, reset, have to face the embarrassment. I did not hit the loop button. And we know so many of you here know how to loop, but now when I want to get my music to loop, it gives me trouble. It seems to be better. Let's see if that works. But let's continue. Ancient Voyager probes plead for death. NASA says no. High mileage. NASA's 2 Voyager spacecraft have been through a lot. Nearly 50 years of space travel and an astonishing 15 billion miles. That's a lot of miles. 15 billion. Let's just put that in perspective. They say that the distance between the Earth to the Sun is 93 million miles. It's also called an astronomical unit, or an AU. 93 million. Well, they say these probes have traveled 15 billion miles. That's a lot of AUs. I want you to do the math on that, everybody. That's deep space. The 2 probes, launched less than a month apart in the summer of 1977, have survived everything from dwindling power supplies and grimy thrusters to near fatal software glitches and several scientific instruments going dark. Wow. So in spite of this story they're giving us about these 2 probes from 1977 that have traveled 15 billion miles, they're still functioning. Dwindling power supplies couldn't keep them down. Grimy thrusters and near fatal software glitches. Nothing can keep these 2 dogged probes down. Still functioning, apparently. We can know this. And we're still communicating with them 15 billion miles away. When people believe this, let's continue. Heck, they weren't even designed to go this far, since they were only originally intended to study our stars, our star system's outer planets. But instead of allowing the 2 spacecraft to rest in peace, a well-deserved end to an almost half-century-long journey, NASA is still trying to every trick in the box to keep the aging probes alive. Again, they're personifying these probes. I mean, of course, they're just simply, hunks of metal with electronics and engineering inside. But no, we need to personify them like we do with cars. We give them female names like ships. It endears us to the idea of these probes. I mean, I'm not accusing like NASA and all popular, academia. I'm not accusing them, certainly not, of trying to appeal to my emotions, trying to get me past my logical thinking mind. The mind that says, really? Is it really possible that you can communicate with anything that's 50 years old and 15 billion miles away? So in an effort to turn off my thinking mind, in no way would they be doing that. No. It's just science, everybody. Of course. Let's continue. Quote, these two spacecrafts are still operating, still returning uniquely valuable science data. And every extra day we get data back is a blessing, Susan Dodd, Voyager project manager, said. You got it, Susan. Or is it Suzanne? I always mix those up. She's Suzanne, by the way. Suzanne Dodd. I'm really trusting you, Suzanne. Gotcha. Lady in charge, everybody. Believe all ladies. Believe all women. Even when they tell you that the Voyager project is completely still operating. Yeah. No backup. Case in point, last week, the team of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory sent a software patch to Voyager 2. The hope is to breathe new life into the aging spacecraft with the goal of eventually doing the same for its twin. Wow. Interesting. So they designed this 1977 level of computer technology with the proper hardware that now we could just keep giving it software updates. Kind of like your iPhone, guys. I don't know about you, but sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'll see your iPhone has been updated with a new operating system. I'm like, oh, that's interesting how they did it. Well, apparently it's not just your smartphone that could do it, through Wi-Fi. It's the two Voyager probes 15 billion miles away. Apparently we have the technology to give them software updates. Yeah, does that make sense? This is the part where a troll come in, like, remember Yurt from Inner Thought Experiments, and Z's using an appeal to incredulity. It's a logical fallacy. Well, you could say that, Yurt. Or, I'm using rhetoric. I'm using a particular form of communication as I talk to my audience. I'm not engaged in a debate. Get it straight, idiots. Let's continue. Where was I? Oh yeah, about the software patch. Yeah, the agency is hoping the patch will address a buildup of fuel residue inside some of the tubes of the spacecraft. Okay, so the probe is 15 million miles away, and they somehow know that there's an issue. There's a buildup of residue inside some of the tubes of the thrusters. It's kind of like I have a lawnmower, and I recently was, having an issue with it. So I brought it to the guy down the street who services lawnmowers, and he said, the fuel intake tube is clogged. No problem. We'll get that taken care of in 2 seconds. Well, much like the guy was able to fix my lawnmower and its clogged tube, apparently NASA is able to fix a clogged tube on a probe 50 years old, 15 billion miles away, and it somehow knows how to do that. And they have the balls to present this as science. Fucking fascinating. Am I still in the air? I do these and I don't know if I'm on the air anymore. It's weird. Let me continue. These thrusters play an incredibly important role, keeping a spacecraft's antenna pointed at Earth and allowing teams back on the ground to communicate with it. Is this the point where Z has to kind of bring up, maybe a question? Question like this. Okay. Well, you say you're addressing this issue with the spacecraft's thrusters. Do I need to ask the question, say, how can there be thrust in space? What do you mean, Z? What do you mean, Z? I saw Star Trek. I saw Star Wars. They were thrusting at incredible speeds. They were doing warp speed. Remember when they were going to warp speed in Star Trek? In Star Wars, they would do light speed. Like the speed of light, everybody. Zooming across the universe. Zooming through wormholes. Einstein-Rosen bridges. Oh, really? Well, you need thrust to do that. Let me ask you. Let's just take it to demonstrable physical science. What does a boat use for thrust? That's right, the water. It has a medium. It has particles to thrust off of. What does a plane use for thrust? That's right, it uses air. It uses air. It uses air particles. It uses matter. Thrust implies certain principles. There's certain laws to thrust. How's the Voyager thrust? What does it thrust off of? What does it use to alter its motion? Does it use water? No. Does it use air? No. It uses what? What do you have in a vacuum to thrust off of? Can somebody answer this question? Oh, see, it's not a complete vacuum. It's just almost a vacuum. There's some hydrogen. Oh, yeah? Enough to thrust off of? Enough to alter the course of this spacecraft? I don't know. What do I... You know, I ask questions. Sometimes I ask a little too many questions. We'll let me just continue. I'm just wondering. I don't know. Anyway. Almost done. We got to get through this. Sometimes these are hard for me to get through because they're completely insane. The software update is also meant to address a recurring glitch that caused Voyager 1 to temporarily go dark in August of 2022. In many ways, these efforts are a last resort, with NASA's engineers running out of ways to squeeze more life out of the two ancient spacecraft. Everything on both spacecraft is single string, Dodd told ARS. There are not any backup capabilities left. In some cases, we powered off stuff to save power, just to keep the instruments on. It's like that movie Apollo 13, remember that? Tom Hanks, Kevin Bacon, other guys. Remember when they kept having to shut off all the power supplies, the different non-essential instruments so they can get back to Earth when they fucked up on their way to the moon? Remember that? I remember that. Seems like they did the same thing here. In the meantime, the team is hoping to complete a major symbolic milestone before the two Voyagers can finally go dark for the last time. Quote, they've overcome lots of issues, and the engineers have been very clever in overcoming these issues, Dodd added. I think the focus now is let's get to 50 and have the biggest party we can. Let's get him to 50, guys. 50 years, 15 billion miles. And we could all celebrate this amazing feat in human engineering that allowed two hunks of junk that were created in 1977 to travel 15 billion miles away and basically define your reality for you. Because of course, when idiots like yours truly come online and say things like, oh, how can we prove this thing they're telling us that we live in a globe that's revolving and orbiting the sun, and where there's all these planets that are orbiting the sun and comets and asteroids. People like me, when they say things like, how could that be? What evidence do we have? All the indoctrinated masses can come back to me and say, what do you mean, dummy? Voyager. 15 billion miles. Software updates, idiot. That's the proof. Duh. NASA, duh. Interesting. Anyway, that'll do it for today's edition of Hashtag Science. Glad you guys stuck around for our wonderfully enlightening segment where we explore the impossible presentation of science.